Fascinating?
Held its first debate over the weekend.
The economy is expected to expand 2.5% this year.
Boosting Korea's ties with its global partners on the sidelines of the Status UN Summit.
A massive drone attack on Ukraine overnight on Monday and Tuesday.
Arirang.
도시는 세계와 연결되어 문화를 창조했고 새로운 것을 받아들였다.
함께여서 우리는 더 자유롭고 더 멀리 갈 수 있어.
닫힌 문이 아니라 열린 질문으로
나에게 APEC은
자유,
융합,
국제성,
다양성,
포용,
개방.
신라의 정신이 APEC 2025로 이어집니다.
Hello and welcome to our morning edition of Arirang News. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. President Lee Jae-myung is in Malaysia for the ASEAN Summit, where he's also scheduled to meet with the Cambodian Prime Minister today. Meanwhile, the APEC Economic Leaders Week kicked off today in Gyeongju, as South Korea gears up to host a series of highly anticipated meetings. After U.S. President Donald Trump described North Korea as sort of a nuclear power, the South Korean government responded by saying that it's closely working with the United States on their shared goal of denuclearization. Amid trade tensions over rare earth materials, the United States and China have reached a framework agreement, signaling progress ahead of a meeting between the two countries' leaders. We begin this morning in Malaysia, where South Korean President Lee Jae-myung is attending his first ASEAN Summit since taking office. For more, our presidential office correspondent Song Yoo-jin, who is traveling with the president, joins us live from Kuala Lumpur. Yoo-jin, what's on the agenda for day two?
Well, first of all, good morning, Eun-ji. So South Korean President Lee Jae-myung begins his second and last day here in Malaysia with a summit with Cambodian Prime Minister Hun Manet. Now, the two leaders will discuss strengthening their strategic partnership and especially ways to jointly combat transnational online scam crimes. Now, as you know, Eun-ji, this issue has been a major concern here in South Korea following the death of a Korean college student who is believed to have been lured to Cambodia by a scam gang, as well as the repatriation of dozens of Koreans allegedly involved in similar crimes. So last week, President Lee chaired an emergency response meeting during which the government decided to establish a special task force on transnational crimes and launch a joint consultation body involving the Foreign Ministry, Justice Ministry, Financial Services Commission, and the National Intelligence Service.
Right, and Eugene, after the South Korea-Cambodia summit, what else is lined up before the president returns home?
Well, I would say that it's quite a packed schedule today, Eun-ji, because after the South Korea-Cambodia summit, President Lee will attend the South Korea-ASEAN Summit and then the ASEAN Plus 3 Summit, which brings together South Korea, Japan, and China, as well as the ASEAN member countries. Now, starting with the South Korean-ASEAN Summit, President Lee will introduce his administration's new vision to further strengthen their comprehensive strategic partnership, which is the bloc's highest level of partnership that it established with Seoul last year. So take a listen to what National Security Advisor Wee told reporters about this vision.
Our new dream is based on the acronym CSP, standing for Contributor for the Dreams and Hope, Springboard for Growth and Innovation, and Partner for Peace and Stability.
Now, we'll get to hear the details once the summit starts, but the president is expected to propose expanding trade, boosting people-to-people exchanges, and coordinating responses to cross-border crimes such as scams and drugs. And at the ASEAN Plus 3 summit, President Lee will focus on cooperation in finance and food security. Now, finally, before wrapping up his 2-day visit in Malaysia, he will also hold a meeting with Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim before returning to Seoul by boarding the presidential jet this afternoon. Now, once he returns to South Korea, waiting for him is the APEC economic leaders meeting in Gyeongju, as well as high-stakes summit with U.S. President Donald Trump and China's Xi Jinping. Back to you, Eun-ji.
All right, Eugene, thank you for that report. Do keep us updated. And also on the first day of his trip to Kuala Lumpur, President Lee Jae-myung also vowed institutional reform to ensure Koreans living abroad can exercise their right to vote without any inconvenience. He made the comments on Sunday local time while meeting the Korean community in Malaysia. The promise aligns with an earlier pledge to improve the overseas voting system. He also promised to make a country that overseas Koreans can be proud of. Meanwhile, on trade talks between South Korea and the United States, President Lee says the two countries remain stuck on major details of negotiations. In an interview with Bloomberg ahead of a meeting with his American counterpart Donald Trump this week, he said all the details remain sticking points, including the method of investment, the amount, and the timeline. He added that the United States will try to maximize its interest, but must not create catastrophic consequences for South Korea. The allies have been struggling to narrow key differences over the deal, including Trump's demand that Seoul make a $350 billion investment upfront in return for lower tariffs. In other news, South Korea's top office said the government will work closely with the United States on their shared goal of denuclearization, after President Donald Trump referred to North Korea as sort of a nuclear power. Meanwhile, North Korea sent its top diplomat to Russia and Belarus, a move that could possibly make talks between the U.S. and the regime less likely. Our Moon Ji-young reports.
Following U.S. President Donald Trump's remarks referring to North Korea as sort of a nuclear power, a South Korean presidential official said on Sunday that Trump appeared to recognize the advanced reality of North Korea's nuclear capabilities rather than officially recognizing its status or abandoning nuclearization goals. They also reaffirmed close coordination with the U.S. on denuclearization. Trump made the remarks during a press meeting aboard Air Force One on Friday in response to a question about Pyongyang's stance that recognition as a nuclear power is a prerequisite for talks with Washington. He departed for an Asia tour over the weekend, which includes a visit to South Korea, and expressed a strong desire to meet with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un.
I'd do it. I mean, if you want to put out the word, I'm open to it. You know, they don't have a lot of telephone service. They have a lot of nuclear weapons, but not a lot of telephone service. So I'm open to it. I had a great relationship with him, and he probably knows I'm coming, right?
However, prospects of a U.S.-North Korea meeting seem to have dimmed as North Korean Foreign Minister Choi Sun-hee departed Pyongyang for a trip to Russia and Belarus. According to the North State media, the Korean Central News Agency on Monday, Choi's visit to the two countries is at the invitation of their foreign ministers. Her absence during the run-up to Trump's visit to South Korea suggests that talks between Kim and Trump are unlikely to materialize. 문지영, 아리랑 뉴스.
Meanwhile, top U.S. and Chinese economic officials agreed on a framework for a new trade agreement ahead of a highly anticipated meeting between their two leaders. The framework trade deal potentially avoids an additional 100% tariff on Chinese goods into the United States. Our Lee Seung-jae has more.
Top U.S. and Chinese economic officials have agreed on the framework of a new trade agreement, signaling progress ahead of a highly anticipated meeting between U.S. President Donald Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping later this week. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and Trade Representative Jameson Greer met with Chinese Vice Premier He Lifeng and top negotiator Li Chenggang on the sidelines of the ASEAN Summit in Kuala Lumpur on Sunday, marking the fifth round of in-person discussions since May. Speaking to ABC News on the same day, Bessent said the two sides averted further tariffs thanks to the maximum leverage provided by Trump.
The president had given me maximum leverage when he threatened 100% tariffs if the Chinese imposed their rare earth global export controls. So I think we have averted that so that the tariffs will be averted.
Bessent said a substantial framework was put in place for the two leaders, adding that China has agreed to delay its expanded licensing regime for rare earth exports by 1 year, a move seen as a concession to ease trade tensions. He also said that China has agreed on substantial agriculture purchases for U.S. farmers. Meanwhile, President Trump arrived in Malaysia on Sunday for the ASEAN Summit, his first stop on a 5-day Asia tour that will culminate his face-to-face meeting with Xi in South Korea on Thursday. Both sides are hoping to defuse mounting trade tensions following months of tariff threats and countermeasures. The new framework, if finalized, could mark a turning point in the trade dispute, with officials emphasizing cooperation over confrontation as they prepare for the leaders' summit later this week. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
So as South Korea prepares to host a summit between Presidents Donald Trump and Xi Jinping, along with a series of other high-level meetings, the APEC Economic Leaders Week kicked off here today in Gyeongju. For more on this, we're joined today by Christopher Goding, Professor of Political Science at Kookmin University. Professor Goding, thanks for joining us this morning.
Thanks for having me. Hello.
So ahead of APEC, President Lee Jae-myung is in Malaysia for the ASEAN Summit, and he's also set to hold a meeting with the Cambodian Prime Minister today. Could you tell us more about the significance of his trip to the region before we go into details about the APEC?
Well, first, for the moment, we are navigating in uncharted waters, ever since Donald Trump got elected, and also because the international situation as a whole is very uncertain with the situation in Palestine, the situation in Ukraine. So for a middle power like Korea, the first task of the president is to somehow ensure some feeling of normalcy, business as usual, that normal channels of communication are still operating. That's the first thing. The other thing is that the ASEAN is not like the EU, for instance. It is mostly a free trade agreement. the main aim, if not the sole aim, of the ASEAN is to improve trade relations. It is to boost trade between all of its member states. And so in this case, as the South Korean economy is heavily dependent on exports, basically, for its growth, for President Lee, here the agenda is very straightforward. It is about finding new trading partners in order to make up for the strained relationship we all know about with the US that used to be one of Korea's main trade partners until very recently.
Right, and Presidents Donald Trump and Xi Jinping will be here in South Korea this week. What might be on the agenda when they meet in Busan?
As always, trade. It's all about the money here. In fact, the situation is relatively simple because they have to come to an agreement. From the US point of view, the US economy is heavily disindustrialized. There are plenty of consumption goods that America doesn't produce anymore, and so to this extent, America needs China. America also needs China for, as it was mentioned in your report earlier, for its rare earth elements, in particular for the tech industry. So Google, Apple, and all of the others, they need to import these rare earth elements from China. Now, considering the Chinese point of view, you know that the Chinese economy has been slowing down for a few years, basically since the COVID-19 era, and domestic consumption is stalling. Therefore, Chinese need to export for their economy not to collapse. As you know, for instance, youth unemployment in China is already skyrocketing. So I don't know how, but China and America have to come to an agreement no matter how much they hate it. And as far as we can tell, and as your report mentioned earlier, they are getting close to an agreement. I assume we can expect reasonably some major announcements to be made at the end of this summit. I think so.
Right, we'll have to see if they do reach a final agreement. And Trump's also interested in meeting North Korea's Kim Jong-un during his Asia trip. What's your take on the possibility of a summit between Kim Jong-un and Donald Trump?
With Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un, anything is possible. Anything is possible because both are highly unpredictable. No, I am more skeptical about the outcome of a meeting, should such a meeting take place. Because, let's face it, the only thing America is interested in regarding North Korea is denuclearization. The one thing Kim Jong-un and North Korea are never to give up on, it is nuclear weapons. So they may meet, some kind of summit may take place, but I cannot see realistically how they could come to any kind of agreement. What we can expect is what took place in Singapore a few years ago in 2018 or 19. They will meet up, they will shake hands, as we are seeing right now in front of cameras, and nothing is to follow. That's the most likely outcome, in my opinion.
I see. I guess it's really very hard to predict if they will meet here in South Korea or during Trump's Asia trip. And ahead of APEC, North Korea sent its Foreign Minister Choi Sun-yi to Russia and Belarus. What might be behind this move?
Oh, it's very straightforward, I'm afraid. What we are seeing is North Korea getting further and further away from China and closer to Russia. Meaning that the North Korean leader, Kim Jong-un, is prioritizing military alliances with Russia, in particular with these troops that North Korea has dispatched in Ukraine, as you know, over trade relations, in particular with China and the rest of the world. So what we can see now is that Kim Jong-un is moving on to a more and more aggressive approach, and this is why he's posing more and more openly as an ally to Vladimir Putin. Remember that North Korea, is the only foreign power that sent troops to Ukraine in order to support the Russian invasion. So that says a lot. And this part, I'm afraid, from the South Korean point of view, is deeply concerning.
Right, that sounds very concerning indeed. All right, Professor Goding, thank you so much for your insight today. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
The defense chiefs of South Korea and the United States will meet in Seoul early next month for their annual security talks. Seoul's defense ministry said Monday that Minister An Kyu-baek and U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth will hold a 57th security consultative meeting on November 4th, marking their first in-person talks. The two are expected to discuss policy coordination on North Korea, the allies' combined defense posture, and extended deterrence measures. Naval maintenance and repair cooperation will also be on the agenda. The ministry added that both sides aim to strengthen their alliance in a future-oriented and mutually beneficial way to address evolving regional threats and security challenges. Now, shifting gears, South Korea's National Assembly convened on the weekend in a rare show of bipartisan cooperation to pass bills spanning healthcare, welfare, education, and environmental reform. Our political correspondent Moon Hee-ryun has the details.
The National Assembly held a rare weekend plenary session on Sunday, passing a total of 76 bills aimed at improving citizens' welfare and addressing key social issues.
I believe that holding a plenary session on Sunday with bipartisan agreement is very meaningful, as it demonstrates both parties' commitment to passing livelihood-related bills.
Among the most notable legislation is a bill designed to prevent gaps in emergency room care by improving patient triage and establishing direct communication channels between emergency medical institutions and transport providers. Other bills passed during the session cover a wide range of social and public welfare issues. Amendments to the Child Welfare Act now allow foster parents to exercise legal authority over financial accounts for the children in their care. A new law also prohibits sex offenders from operating or working in accommodations serving foreign nationals. In addition, lawmakers passed legislation establishing lifelong education programs for people with disabilities to promote independent living and social participation. Bills were also approved to support the stable supply of essential medicines, ensure interest relief on student loans, and provide compensation support for victims of digital sex crimes during criminal proceedings. Financial and administrative reforms were included as well. Local governments will now be able to issue bonds in response to unforeseen urgent financial needs. The creation of the National Assembly Records Office was authorized to manage official parliamentary documents. Environmental accountability was strengthened through enhanced procedures for greenhouse gas reduction plans aimed at achieving carbon neutrality by 2050. During the session, lawmakers also formally reported a notion for a parliamentary investigation into last year's Jeju Air plane crash at Muan Airport, signaling continued oversight of government affairs. Political observers say the session reflects growing pressure on lawmakers to focus on public welfare amid ongoing partisan disputes. Moon Hee-ryun, Arirang News.
Good morning. I'm Chu Ji-hyun, and this is The World Now. In Kuala Lumpur on Sunday, U.S. President Donald Trump co-signed a ceasefire deal between Thailand and Cambodia in Washington's strongest diplomatic push in the region this year. The truce, signed on the sidelines of the ASEAN Summit, formalizes an earlier July agreement that halted 5 days of border fighting that killed dozens and displaced thousands. Its first phase includes the release of captured soldiers, the removal of landmines, and international troop monitoring along the frontier. Alongside the peace pact, Washington announced trade deals with Malaysia and Cambodia and an MOU on critical minerals and supply chain resilience with Thailand. U.S. President Donald Trump announced a 10% tariff increase on imports from Canada on Saturday after a political spat over an advertisement sponsored by the Ontario government, which quotes former U.S. President Ronald Reagan. The ad, which includes part of an address made by Reagan in 1987, where he said tariffs hurt every American, was described by Trump as a fraud. Trump also criticized Canadian officials for failing to withdraw the ad before World Series matches between Canada's Toronto Blue Jays and U.S. team the LA Dodgers. Canada is currently the only G7 country without a fresh deal under Washington's tariff regime, which already includes levies of 35% on goods, 50% on metals, and 25% on automobiles. The Canadian Chamber of Commerce urged both sides to resolve the dispute through diplomacy, urging that escalating tariffs would hurt North American competitiveness. In Moscow on Sunday, Russia announced a successful test of its nuclear-powered Burevestnik cruise missile. Russian officials say the missile, known by NATO as Skyfall, flew for 15 hours and covered about 14,000 kilometers, demonstrating its ability to evade missile defenses. The Kremlin says the weapon, powered by a nuclear engine, could soon be deployed as part of its strategic arsenal, calling it a system no one else in the world has. The test came just hours after Russia launched one of its deadliest air assaults on Ukraine in weeks. More than 100 drones and missiles struck residential areas in Kiev, killing at least 3 civilians and injuring dozens. Ukrainian officials said Russia has unleashed nearly 1,200 drones and 50 missiles in the past week alone. In Paris on Saturday, police arrested 2 suspects over the recent jewelry heist at the Louvre Museum, one of the boldest art thefts in French history. Authorities say one suspect was detained at Charles de Gaulle Airport as he prepared to board a flight out of the country, and another was reported planning to travel to Mali. They didn't say whether any of the jewelry valued at more than $100 million had been recovered. The arrests come a week after 4 masked thieves used power tools and a ladder truck to break into the museum's gallery of Apollo in broad daylight. Officials say DNA evidence found at the scene led to the suspect's identification. France's justice minister admitted security protocols had failed, damaging the country's global image. In response, the Louvre has tightened security and transferred its most valuable pieces to the Bank of France's underground vaults.
An unseasonably harsh cold front has brought early winter conditions back to the peninsula. The season's first cold wave advisories have been issued for the inland areas of central parts of Korea. And furthermore, strong winds advisories are active for parts of Chungcheongnam-do and the west coast of Jeollado provinces. The rest of the country is also dealing with biting cold winds that are driving down temperatures. Tomorrow will be even colder, with Seoul's morning low is forecast to drop down to further 2 degrees Celsius, and this round of severe cold snap will gradually recover to seasonal averages as we head towards the end of the week. This afternoon, daytime highs will remain chilly, only reaching 11 degrees here in the capital. Daegu, Gwangju will be topping out at 13 degrees, but skies will be mostly clear nationwide. Then we can look forward to return to a late autumn weather at the end of the week, with rain in the forecast on Friday in the capital area and west of Gangwon-do province.
That's all we have for this morning. Arirang News will be back at noon Korea time. Thanks for watching.
globally recognized sports powerhouse. Behind the dazzling achievements, there's always an invisible force at work. With sophisticated materials, cutting-edge equipment, and innovative technological solutions, SMEs in the K-sports industry play a vital role in bolstering Korea's status as a sports powerhouse. By integrating AI technology, they unlock athletes' potential and enhance performance, elevating the sports environment to the next level and opening new markets in the sports industry. Their innovative technology and bold challenges drive the growth of Korea's sports industry, creating a better world through sports. The innovation of these SMEs never stops. A systematic partnership support program is implemented to discover promising sports SMEs, provide technical validation and R&D support to enhance competitiveness, and strengthen the foundation for overseas expansion. At Tokyo Sportech 2025, the technological prowess of Korean companies was recognized. The Ministry of Culture, Sports and Tourism, and the Korea Sports Promotion Foundation supported K-sports companies with product promotion and business consultations with global buyers, demonstrating product quality and market potential, and confirming the possibility of expanding into the global market.
저희는 ICT 강국으로서 그 바이어나 사용자들한테 신기술을 접목한 생활 스포츠 기회를 실질적으로 확대할 수 있는 그 기회를 제공하는 데 많은 도움이 될 수 있으리라고 확신을 합니다.
이제 스포츠도 K죠. K 스포츠는 이겁니다.
The joy for all, created by the power of K-sports. Experience the future of the new sports industry through the innovation and technology of the Korean sports industry.
제주 영어 교육 도시의 중심 NLCS 제주에서 세계 명문대 출신 엘리트 교사진과 해외 커리큘럼으로 전 세계 상위 1%의 학사 성과를 달성하고 있으며 졸업생들은 세계 최정상급 대학으로 진학하고 있습니다. 전인적인 성장과 함께 꿈을 찾아가는 특별한 교육의 가치. 글로벌 동문 네트워크로 계속됩니다. NLCS 제주가 명문대 진학의 길을 열어갑니다.
We're here to bring a new type of news show.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Bringing news just for you. It's Monday, October 27th here in Seoul. I'm Lee Soo-jin, and this is News Generation. Joining us today is Jessica.
Happy Monday, everyone!
Happy Monday! also Chung is with us.
Happy Monday.
Happy Monday. And both are here to speak on behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. So it's Monday and we're kicking off another work week, and it's the start of a new work week, which is probably making us dream even more about escaping to maybe somewhere far away where life feels a little easier. So well, imagine this, a job overseas that offers a 10 million won or nearly $7,000 monthly salary, free housing, 2 meals a day, and even flight tickets. Sounds almost too good to be true, right? But if you actually had the chance, would you take it, Julian?
I mean, based on just that information, I don't think so.
Oh.
And here's my reason. Although it does look like to be a good deal, there are many factors to consider than just benefits and salary. And to be frank, if there's a job posting and that's all the information available, it is likely to be a scam. But if we were to assume that it's not a scam, though, I'd have a little more questions regarding the job, but so far the salary and the benefits is not something I'm mad about. So
How could you be mad? It sounds way too good.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
many benefits right there, yeah.
Yeah, but I think there's just so many things to consider, and you have to really see if you're a good match for the experience. Work-life balance is also a huge factor to consider, and other conditions that could possibly be deal breakers are things to consider instead of just the benefits and the salary.
So you're actually on the search for a job. Which of these benefits would you be most inclined to kind of go for? Like with housing, meals, free meals?
Honestly, I don't know. I guess all of the above is if that could be an option.
I mean, all those sound really great.
Yeah.
So these perks sound really tempting, but it would definitely depend on what kind of work it is. And it looks like there are so many overseas job postings these days, and it's hard not to be a little suspicious. So what are your thoughts on this, Chiska?
So I've actually gotten spam messages that have these tempting and captivating descriptions, work from home or make 1,000 a month super quick. And for some reason, instead of being excited, my radar kind of goes on. I go, why? If it's this good, why haven't others also jumped on it, right? And coming to me through a text without a legitimate company name, etc. And I'm not being pessimistic, but in a market economy, I truly believe that money equals the value of the service that I provide. But when the work and the transaction of the value of my work isn't clearly defined, and I get a promise of a huge return, I think that is my first red flag.
I think that's really important to remember as well. And so when something sounds that good, you need to make sure, you need to do some background checks to make sure that you need to see what the catch is. And there have been growing reports of employment scams like this, especially targeting young people. So let's take a look at the screen to learn more.
The recent reports of alleged employment scams, illegal confinement, and even torture of South Korean nationals in Cambodia have sparked serious discussions about overseas employment and, more specifically, job scams. What's even more concerning is that many of these scams are targeting millennials and Gen Zs. So today on News Generation, we're diving into why young people are especially vulnerable to such schemes, the common traits of job scams, and what can be done to protect ourselves from becoming victims.
So as we just talked about in our intro, these employment scams are becoming increasingly sophisticated. They post on job search sites, advertising incredible benefits, high salaries, housing, meals, even flight tickets, all to lure people in. But once victims arrive, the reality is completely different. And what's particularly troubling is that these criminals are targeting millennials and Gen Zs the most. So how are young people being targeted, Chiska?
Yeah, as you said, it usually starts with a very, very lucrative and almost too perfect offer that get young people hooked. I mean, after all, when the job market is tough, these type of ads are bound to catch people's attention very quickly. Alas, once you get caught and you find out what's truly behind it, it's mostly extremely illegal and dangerous off-the-market jobs. For instance, there can be illegal casinos, gambling, and multiple ladders and stages of voice phishing, scams, and fraud. And in extreme cases, because there are young people without a lot of experience in society, they get into it too deep and end up in unspeakable situations. We're talking about hostage, violence, abuse, and sometimes even have to risk their lives. And I know this is really sad, but I actually have an anecdote of a few people who actually got involved with voice phishing and got caught. And do you know what their job was when they got the offer? It was literally sitting down at a desk and just transfer and wire money. That was it. It was a simple job, and they got paid a lot, so they got really into it. Turns out it was one of the steps of voice phishing. So they were pawns, and they were the ones that got caught, and the real scammers who hid behind the scenes, they never got caught.
I think that's also why it's so easy to get into, because it seems like such a simple task.
Exactly.
All you have to do is transfer money. It's such an easy thing to do. But it's horrifying how quickly what seems to be a promising or easy opportunity can turn into a dangerous situation. And what's even scarier is a lot of these scams look completely legitimate at first. They use trusted job platforms a lot of time and very polished postings. So we're talking about real lives being put at risk here, not just financial loss, but violence, confinement, even death in some cases. But despite these warnings, these operations still seem to be going on. For one, we've been seeing a lot of headlines recently related to Southeast Asia, particularly Cambodia. So how does that connect to what we just talked about, Julian?
Yeah, so the Cambodia issue is a very prevalent and serious issue that's being continuously reported these days. But currently, the suspect who lured people with job scams and made the victims do illegal work, confining them and assaulting them, have been caught and extradited to Korea, and the investigation is currently ongoing. However, even after media reported on these job scams, kidnappings, and confinement, similar fraudulent jobs unfortunately still remain on the internet.
And for young people who are eager to build a career abroad, it can be incredibly hard to tell which opportunities are real and which ones are traps. So even increased media coverage doesn't seem to be slowing this down, which is why it's important to raise awareness about what to look out for. So Jessica, what should people look out for when they see these job postings?
So I'm a firm believer in that sometimes things can be very good to be true, but only upon checking and rechecking. So when it sounds too good, but isn't quite verifiable, that could be the first sign. So let's take a look at the screen to spot some of the characteristics of job scams and conditions they come in. Now, it's usually a combination of a few of these or all of them. So job posting that reads like, Julian, are you listening? Quote, we give you an extremely high salary for a very simple job. Example, just transfer money, like I talked about in my episode, answer calls, or go somewhere and pick something up. We also provide attractive benefits, housing, meals, and flights, Sujin, like you mentioned, sometimes I think to lure in foreigners, and would most likely say that they use very specific apps for work purpose that end up being untraceable. So on the surface, as you can see, it hits pretty much all the golden boxes for what any job seeker would dream of.
Right, so all these the jobs that they describe sound so easy compared to how much you're getting paid for. So, and it also sounds trustworthy on the outside. So scammers really know how to target what young job seekers want the most: stability, benefits, and an easy entry point. So these red flags are definitely there, but they're often hidden behind perks that seem too tempting to ignore. So do you know of any other ways employment scams tend to happen, Julian?
Yeah, so besides the information that goes into resumes needed during the hiring process, demanding communication or financial information, or making applicants open things like additional bank accounts or mobile phone lines is also characteristics of job scams. Therefore, if you feel like a hiring manager is asking too much personal information, just like the things I mentioned earlier, trust your instincts and do not provide that information to them. No regular job will ever require an applicant to open a new bank account or a separate phone line, especially before the offer letter and before you sign the offer letter. These are just things that there's no reason why they need that from you.
Way too fishy.
Right. I mean, like you said, no legitimate employer should ever be asking you, like you said, to open a new bank account or a separate phone line just for a job. But unfortunately, even though it seems really obvious, many young victims only realize these things when it's already too late. So if someone does get trapped in one of these situations, what happens next and what legal protections are available? So to help us understand all this, we're going to speak with a legal expert, and that conversation will take place right after the break, so don't go anywhere.
NewsGen wants to hear from you. Go to YouTube and search out channel Arirang News. Click Posts and cast your vote in the poll. Make a new type of news with us.
Joining us today is An Jung-sang, a lawyer here in Korea. Hello, thank you so much for connecting with us today.
Good morning.
Good morning. So what legal options are available for those who've fallen victim to employment scams?
Well, I think that this Cambodian situation is a little more complicated than before, right? In this case, that the victim is also considered as a criminal. And from a victim's perspective, he or she needs to focus on depends on the culpability it means that I committed a crime, but as charged, but I was under duress. Means that I was either forced to do so or threatened to do so. In this respect, the court will look at close into the fact that both sides, whether it is the victim side and then the offender side, criminal side. So court will kind of testing a balance on how much they're forced to do it or they willing to do it. That's the fact-finding issue, and then court will looking at carefully in how the proportions and how much it happened. And sometimes some people change their mind, right? Sometimes maybe you went to go to Cambodia without knowing exactly what happening, and then in some point maybe you change your mind, and you might court might see that looking at look at that, and someone actually changed their mind, and then voluntarily join the criminal act. There will be the beginning of the criminal situation.
We've talked about the fact that a lot of young people are falling prey to these kind of scams. So what happens if someone is forced to take part in a crime after being tricked by these type of job scams? Would they still face punishment?
Actually, it's a very tough question because that really depends on the fact finding. I think they call it case by case situation because the criminal law, there's a special provision, right, saying that basically the criminal defense on duress defense under the criminal code, and it basically means that we call like willful blindness. If you committed some crime, knowingly, it was the crime. That's we call willful blindness, and really depends on the fact finding. And Korean court will looking at where someone have the willful blindness for this situation. But however, if we court do not find, so it's based on if you have knowingly did it or you intentionally did it. If you court find it, someone did it from the knowingly between intentionally, they will subject to criminal penalty. But if we court find that someone did it below the level of knowingly, and then there will be any criminal penalty. So that's will be the fact-finding situation, and court will carefully looking at what will the level of the intent. So it's the knowingly did it or intentionally did it, or below the knowingly level, there will be no penalty. Right?
Mm-hmm. So what about the people behind these job scams? What kind of legal consequences do they end up facing?
That's a very interesting question because that the Korea have, they will, technically speaking, there is a territorial jurisdiction and the personal jurisdiction. Territorial jurisdiction means that it matters location of crime. So is it happening in Korea or in the Cambodia? In that case, maybe that not apply. But in Korean criminal system, also using the personal jurisdiction means that it's applied to the Korean, in Korea or abroad. So the Korean criminal law will apply to this situation because the victims are Korean citizens, right? So it's based on the nationality. So there's something like the just exactly same happening in Korea because the Korean law apply to Korean victims. The question is that if the committed there, if you're the leader of the crime, something, right? Or in the crime situation, Cambodia, that's very severe penalty, just like you did it in Korea, like a boys facing issue. So it doesn't matter what happens, as long as you're the Korean national, you're holding the Korean passport, the Korean law apply. Also, the Korean law will penalize someone with commit crime in overseas. Also, will protect if the court find that they didn't commit under duress. So there's no difference. The bottom line is that Korean law applies to situation, and then they will protect you, also get punish you. So that's the base situation here.
So it looks like there's a lot of things to consider here, whether it's intentional, also the location as well. So thank you so much for sharing all of that today.
Okay, my pleasure.
Thank you.
We've just spoken with a legal expert about how the law handles individuals who are coerced into committing a crime and the consequences that perpetrators will be facing. But these employment scams aren't just affecting South Korean citizens. So can you tell us how these schemes are targeting people from other countries as well and what's known about these cases, Jessica?
Yes, absolutely. We're seeing very similar cases across Southeast Asia. About 3 years ago, there was a case of more than 40 Vietnamese who escaped from a casino compound in Cambodia where they had been held against their will. Now, they too were lured by false promises of high-paying computer jobs, only to find themselves forced to work up to 14 hours a day running online scam operations under threats and physical abuse. And they were locked up and kept in almost like a jail condition. And this isn't an isolated case. Many victims, those that do come out alive, choose to actually not report their activities. And I think they fear the consequences and repercussions from the scammers, but also from the legal part as well. Yeah.
Right, there's a lot of things to be considered and why. It's also understand why people are keeping quiet. So this isn't just affecting South Koreans. Similar schemes are happening across Southeast Asia. On the surface, these look like normal overseas jobs, but in reality, victims are being confined, forced to work long hours, even threatened with violence. So Cheska mentioned Southeast Asia. Are there similar cases happening in other countries, Julian?
Yes, unfortunately, it's not just prevalent in Southeast Asia. For example, we have been seeing similar cases in Taiwan as well. Victims reported being deceived by ads claiming that they could live in luxury hotels and earn lots of money, only to end up in confined so-called scam compounds and forced into labor. And more recently, the United States and the United Kingdom imposed sanctions on the Cambodian criminal organization known as the Prince Group, which has carried out job scams and illegal fishing towards targeting their citizens. And these schemes are getting more and more sophisticated, and there has to be something done to protect these job seekers from being victims of these crimes, and serious international response is actually needed to address this issue.
I hear about these compounds and also groups like the Prince Group puts things really into perspective, and it's a stark reminder of how sophisticated and dangerous these operations are, and the fact that the US and UK have had to sanction the Cambodia criminal group shows how serious their international response also needs to be. And all of this really underscores that young job seekers worldwide are vulnerable. So Cheska, why are young people especially vulnerable to these scams?
Yeah, I think it is the most unfortunate, but it has to do with the fact that the scammers are exploiting the fact that young people are the most experienced in pretty much everything. I mean, they lack experience, and I too, coupled with difficulty of finding stable jobs, and the fear for the future could make people desperate. And once they see these lucrative offers that just come right at them, they almost feel like it's a golden ticket out of the situation. So they kind of go into it hoping that it would, alleviate their financial burden and change their situation. And the scammers know this too well and lure them in slowly by faking trust and legitimacy. And young people are prone to it because they're unaware of the details, and they're prey to something that is wrapped up in a shiny cover, and before they realize it's too late, they're into it too deep. Yeah.
So at the core of it, it really highlights how the situation, how desperate people are in these situations. When jobs are scarce and living costs are high, young people are more likely to take big risks for quick financial gains. It's a combination of limited opportunities and financial pressure that makes these high-paying scams so tempting. So even when the risks are obvious, the promise of a quick solution can be very persuasive. Besides job scarcity, are there any other reasons why some young people fall for these scams?
Yeah, it's understandable, but the get-rich-quick mentality is also a problem. Now, many young people are actually very desperate to make money, a lot of money in the shortest way possible, in fact. In some cases, young people fall for these job scams even though they know that they're illegal, tempted by the promise of high earnings. So with the risky investments of cryptocurrency and stocks becoming popular, some young people even take out loans, but they get in situations where they're unable to pay back those loans. So these put young people in very vulnerable situations, and they're becoming very desperate, making them more susceptible to fall for these scams.
And all this really shows that it's not just the lack of jobs. Sometimes young people knowingly take risks because the rewards seem so tempting. So it's a dangerous mix of financial pressure and the allure of fast money. And that's why it's so important to also talk about how to avoid falling for a job scam. So to close off our discussion today, what are some concrete steps or strategies people can take to protect themselves, Cheska?
Yeah, I truly believe that awareness can be the first line of defense. And because there are no opportunities that should come at the cost of our dignity and our safety. And beyond the practical steps of verifying and always rechecking, which are also very important, I think we have to get down to why people fall prey to these kind of scams. And as we discussed in today's episode, I truly hope that the culture around job seeking and also employment struggling can be an open discussion. And also those coming out of possibly being tricked into these kind of things can speak up so that we can actually raise awareness too.
Yeah. Right, raising awareness is really important. Also understanding their situation as well. So do you have anything to add to this, Julian?
Well, everything that Jessica just mentioned, I 100% agree. But to add on top of it, given the tough economic situation our generation is going through, it does make sense why people are very, very desperate to quickly make money to get out of unstable financial situations. But when looking for jobs, I think it's really important to trust your gut instinct. Make sure that if you're getting uncomfortable requests such as opening like a phone line like we mentioned or bank accounts, just chances are that it's a scam, especially if it's before an offer letter. So just keep that in mind when looking for jobs. Stay diligent and strong. I'm sure that better financial opportunities are available in the future, and that's all I can mention.
Well said. So employment scams are becoming increasingly common and sophisticated, targeting young job seekers with promises that seem almost too good to be true. The key takeaway here is that awareness and caution are essential. Always verify job offers, never share sensitive financial information, and be wary of opportunities that seem too easy or too lucrative. By staying informed and cautious, young people can protect themselves and avoid falling victim to these schemes. So stay alert and don't let the promise of quick money blind you to the risks. So that brings us to the end of today's episode of News Generation, but News Gen will be back tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. Korea time with more stories and discussions. A big thanks to Cheska.
Pleasure's all mine. Thank you
for coming in. Also Julian.
Thank you for having me today.
And to our viewers, thank you so much for tuning in. We hope you have the best day. We are
News Generation.
갈까요?